Welcome back to the Archive Network. Aurelius here with Malik, curators of the Conflict Archive. We left Napoleonic Wars last time in 1809. Austria rises again. Today we pick up where we left off. Smoke rises over distant hills, a grim signal of unrest. From the Baltic to the Mediterranean, battles erupt across the continent like wildfire. The war that began in the heart of Europe now spreads, unstoppable and unforgiving. In 1806, Prussia, stung by defeat and humiliation, decides to join a new coalition. They're determined to halt Napoleon's relentless march before he consumes everything in his path. We watch as alliances shift and nations scramble to respond, revealing the fragile nature of power.
But that determination led to disaster. The battles of Jena and Auerstedt weren't just military engagements. They were a stark reminder of Prussia's desperation. What you call relentless could easily be seen as reckless ambition. Napoleon wasn't just marching. He was steamrolling anyone who dared to oppose him. Think about the lives affected, the families torn apart, the communities shattered. Each clash left scars that went far beyond the battlefield. It's a human story, one filled with pain and loss.
The aftermath was nothing short of chaos. Under cold, fog-choked skies, Prussian armies in blue clashed with the French, each side determined to assert its dominance. The fields, once lush and vibrant, became a scene of utter devastation. When the guns finally fell silent, the cries of the wounded pierced the gloom. We can hardly ignore the toll of such ambition. War doesn't just reshape borders. It consumes everything and everyone in its path, leaving scars that last for generations.
But what about the human cost? For every officer who survived, dozens of nameless conscripts were buried in shallow graves. They weren't just casualties. They were lives cut short, dreams extinguished. The chaos you describe, it was a slaughter, and it fueled a deeper resentment across Europe that would linger long after the battles ended.
The French swept onward, their tricolor flying high above Berlin. Napoleon imposed the continental system, determined to choke off British trade. It was a calculated move aimed at crippling England economically. But we often forget the cost. It bred new suffering and fierce resistance among the very people he sought to control. Instead of submission, he ignited a spirit of defiance. This was a classic example of how ambition can backfire, creating more chaos than order in the heart of an empire.
That suffering showed up in ways we didn't expect. Smugglers transformed into heroes in their communities, risking everything to bring in forbidden goods. The continental system didn't just fail. It ignited rebellion and dissent. People aren't just passive victims. They fight back against oppression. That struggle adds layers to the conflict, revealing the resilience and courage of everyday folks. It's a reminder that history isn't just about battles. It's about the choices people make when faced with hardship.
In Spain and Portugal, we saw the economy collapse under the weight of Napoleon's ambitions. Hunger spread like wildfire, and bread riots erupted as families fought to survive each day. It was a perfect storm of chaos and desperation. People took to the streets, furious and hungry, while the ruling classes struggled to maintain control. This backlash was something Napoleon hadn't fully grasped. As we look back, it's clear that these events were just the beginning of a much larger conflict.
And then, in the Iberian Peninsula, the war erupted anew. Spanish guerrillas and Portuguese partisans began to strike back with fierce determination. This wasn't just military action. It was a desperate fight for identity and survival. Families were torn apart, and the violence was merciless. Civilians lived in constant fear, never knowing which army would bring death to their door. Each day was a struggle, and every decision felt like a gamble with their lives.
French reprisals were swift and brutal, a grim reality that we can't ignore. In Badajoz, whole neighborhoods were put to the sword, leaving devastation in their wake. Survivors stumbled through the ruins, desperately searching for loved ones, their grief hanging in the air like a thick fog. The Peninsular War became a festering wound, draining French strength and resolve. Without clear front lines, this conflict spiraled into chaos, revealing the true cost of empire in human suffering.
And what of the British? Their intervention only complicated matters further. Wellesley's redcoats landed in Portugal, but they faced a landscape fraught with danger. It wasn't just a battle against the French. It was a battle for the hearts and minds of the people. The locals were caught in the crossfire, torn between loyalty and survival. Without their support, victory would mean little. A win on the battlefield wouldn't change the everyday struggles of families just trying to make it through the war.
But as Napoleon's empire stretched from Lisbon to Warsaw, it came at an immense cost. Every mile was paid for in blood, and the toll was heavy. His relentless conscription efforts emptied entire villages, leaving fields untended and families shattered. We saw communities torn apart. The longer he fought, the more resentment bubbled among the occupied populations. People began to see him not as a liberator but as an oppressor, and that bitterness would echo long after his empire faded.
By 1809, the situation was dire. Austria, once defeated, was rising again, fueled by the pain of loss and the thirst for revenge. The Battle of Wagram would unfold under blackened skies, a brutal clash that would claim countless lives, each one a story cut short. Napoleon's ambition was undimmed, pushing him forward. But his enemies were growing desperate. This cycle of violence breeds nothing but more violence, leaving families shattered and communities torn apart. What's the cost of this ambition?
The rivers choked with bodies and broken gear, a grim testament to the chaos of war. Napoleon's empire looked unassailable, but beneath the surface, cracks were spreading like a slow poison. The continental system backfired spectacularly. Smugglers thrived, raking in profits, while the treasury strained under the weight of endless conflict. The people of Europe, hollow-eyed and weary, longed for peace. Yet we could sense a storm brewing, one that would dwarf all the turmoil that had come before.
That's where we leave it this time. Napoleonic Wars continues. The story isn't finished yet. Find the full series on the Conflict Archive, part of the Archive Network. We'll be back with the next chapter.